Every year, there's a new disease that we can solve. AI is a new thing, and it can be used for very good things and very bad things. The concept of bringing together one of the leading crop protection companies in the world with one of the leading seed companies in the world is brilliant. You're here for a purpose, and so do something great.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of our Young Economist podcast. My name is Lorenzo.
And I'm Anna.
It's a pleasure to have you back. As you can already hear, it's a pretty special episode because it's our very first podcast in English. And that's because we have a really special guest, Mr. Bill Anderson. You were born all the way in Texas and did an impressive career in the pharma industry. And right now you are the CEO of Bayer. Thank you so much for taking your time.
My pleasure. Great to see you, Lorenzo and Anna. Looking forward to it.
Great to see you too. At Young Economist, it's all about gaining insights into the lives of successful people and leaders. Could you walk us through your past week a little bit? What were some notable events you had on your schedule?
Well, let's see. The last week, one thing that was very focused on, we're reviewing our 5-year plan right now. So every year we do an update on sort of, okay, what's the outlook over the next 5 years? Are there things we want to adjust? Our strategy in one of the divisions, looking at the sort of our P&L projections, our cash flow projections, and our investment decisions. So a lot of last week was doing that. I had an opportunity over at the Bayer Arena, which is the home of Bayer Leverkusen, to address a group of communications leaders and talk about what we're doing at Bayer right now, which is quite a change in ways of working, but maybe we'll talk about that some more. And I had a number of conversations with employees, including one thing that I did that was a little different was we had some employees that had some concerns, had some, I'd say, constructive criticism, and I decided to invite them for some sessions because I wanted to hear the people with the most critical views, because I find that very useful.
Yeah, sure. Very interesting.
What were those people talking about? What was their main issues, their main criticism?
Oh, people were concerned about the stock price, which that's a concern. People were concerned about how to best implement our new system without too many difficult impacts on people. Because, part of what we're doing right now at Bayer is we're trying to create a much more dynamic system that's not so hemmed in by layers of management that require approvals and things. And so we're taking out a lot of layers of management, and that can be hard. So some really good dialogue.
I see. Let's talk a little bit about Bayer as a company. As we mentioned before, you are the CEO of this massive company. Most people know it from medicine like the aspirin pill or other medications you can buy at your local pharmacy. But when we did our research, we realized that Bayer is actually a massive company. I think 100,000 employees, one of Germany's largest. Can you give us a little bit of a pitch what Bayer is all about?
Yeah, well, we have a mission, and I'm sure you saw it on the way in, which is health for all, hunger for none. And now that's a pretty big, bold claim, and this precedes my time. This has been our mission for some years. But the reason it's health for all and hunger for none is because we have a large pharmaceutical division that's making medicines for cancer, for eye disease, for many other conditions, heart disease. And so we are working now, for example, to potentially treat or even potentially stop the progress of Parkinson's disease. We have a cell therapy approach to that, which has shown some promising results, and a gene therapy result that's shown very promising results. And so just gives you an idea of some of the scope of what we're doing. But we also have the world's best known brand in consumer health products. And so Bayer, is known virtually in every country, and Bayer aspirin, but also products like Alka-Seltzer, like Aleve, Claritin. These are important products. And we tend to take them for granted in a country like Germany. But if you go to many countries, people don't have access to doctors. And so for them, these kind of self-care products are really essential. And so we're working to get, right now we're supporting about 600 million people in the world with these self-care products, and we're aiming to get to 1 billion and then go beyond. And then finally, in agriculture, we have Bayer Crop Science, and we're the world's largest provider of seeds. So seeds for growing, well, everything from corn and soybeans to vegetables, fruits, and we also have a large crop protection division and a digital farming division. So we're one of the essential suppliers to farmers all over the world.
So you basically have the 3 main business areas: consumer health, then pharmaceuticals, and crop science. Could you give us a little insight into the 3 areas and tell us which one is your most important one when it comes to revenue, which one is maybe the business area you like most? Could you give us a little bit just of an insight into the 3 business areas?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of size, the pharma division and the crop science division are approximately the same size. And then the consumer health division is about half the size of each of those.
Just to make it clear, what is the main difference between consumer health and pharma?
Yeah, so pharma is basically medicines you're going to get from your doctor or you're going to get in a hospital. And consumer health is medicines you can get at your local pharmacy. Just walk in and say, hey, I'd like some of this.
Okay.
Right?
So aspirin would be consumer health.
Exactly.
And like cancer medication
Yes.
would be pharma. Okay.
Exactly. And so in the case of pharma, I think what's particularly interesting for us, we have a real sort of renewal happening in our pipeline because our biggest medicine over the last decade has been a blood thinner that's used very commonly. I broke my leg 4 years ago skateboarding, and I had to take Xarelto after my surgery to put my leg back together. Yeah, preventing blood clots and things. And that medicine is great, but the patents are expiring, and so our branded business is going away as we speak, and it's our biggest. So that's a big challenge. Fortunately,
how much revenue do you make with just this one truck?
Around 4 billion euros.
Oh, quite a bit.
Yeah. And so a huge part of our revenue and profit for that division, it's going away over the next few years. And so we're basically replacing that with new medicines for things like prostate cancer, for heart failure. We actually have a new medicine launching next year that I think is really cool. It's for menopausal symptoms. So, Young Economist, you may not get too many people on that topic, but believe me, a generation older, a lot of people are really excited about that. And I get a lot of questions from friends of mine who are saying, Bill, when is that medicine coming?
So when is it coming?
It's coming next year.
Next year?
It should be, around the middle of the year. So pharmaceuticals is such a fascinating field because of the progression of science. I mean, when I was in undergrad, the ability to splice a gene was a new concept. I mean, that happened in the 70s, okay? Now, the majority of the major medicines in the world are coming from that invention. So it's fascinating. Crop science is incredibly exciting because of the potential impact in the world. I mean, we are making products to significantly increase the production of common food, like grains that are used to feed animals and people, things like direct-seeded rice, which is a Bayer innovation that allows production of rice with 40% less water and 40% less methane emissions. And rice production produces something like 2% of all global greenhouse gas emissions, okay? So if you can reduce it by 40%, that's just one company, one product can have a huge impact. And then consumer health, as I mentioned, it's really encouraging. You can go kind of to every corner of the world and find people who are benefiting from Bayer consumer health products. So it's hard to have like a favorite division.
I see.
Because they're all doing great stuff, yeah.
We already got very deep into the topic, but first I would like to go a little bit back in your life. You grew up in Texas, we already mentioned that, coming from a rather humble background, and today you're one of the top CEOs in the world. Was there a point in your life where you thought for the first time, I want to aim high, I want to pursue such a career?
Yeah, well, actually, my father was raised by his parents, who really hadn't very good economic possibilities. His dad had had childhood polio and was, disabled from it. And because, so my dad was born in 1920, and it's kind of an amazing family story, but his father was quite old when he had him, and then my dad was 46 when he had me. So, my grandfather was born in the 1870s. All right,
that's long family history.
Yeah. But my father's parents, who I never knew because they had passed away before I was born, they were poor, and my dad had to go live with his sister during the Depression because his parents couldn't afford to feed him. And his sister had a job as a teacher, and so she had a steady income. And so this gives you an idea. And so my dad really drilled into me, hey, if you've got health and you've got ability, you got to use it to the greatest extent possible. I mean, that's a blessing from God, and you can't waste it. So I was raised on a very steady diet of that. And he always taught me, like, hey, you got to do something great. No, if you get sick or something happens to you and you can't, well, that's different. But otherwise, there's none of this. Like, life is not there to make yourself comfortable. Life is not there to, kind of get yourself all set so you can kick back and take it easy. You're here for a purpose, and so do something great.
I really like
very
that.
Very touching, yeah.
Your studies were also a really important stage of your life. You studied at the University of Texas and at MIT, and your major was in chemical engineering. Many of our viewers are right now at a point where they have to consider to which schools they go, what major they pursue a career in. How did you make this decision to study chemical engineering?
Well, I grew up in a small town in South Texas that was in the shadow of one of the largest chemical plants in the world, okay? If you will, I kind of grew up in the Leverkusen of Texas.
What company is that?
Actually, Dow Chemical.
Oh, Dow Chemical. Okay.
Yeah, in the day. So, growing up there, most of the people that I met who were, business leaders or leaders in the community, many of them were chemical engineers.
I see.
And so it wasn't a stretch to think, well, maybe there's something there. I also had this idea that I think technology is going to be important, and I'm not sure which technology is going to be most important in the future, but if I do an engineering degree, I had to be able to pursue something with that.
So you mixed it, chemical and engineering, and
and I would say this: I don't think you don't have to pursue a technical degree. For example, one of my sons pursued finance, and that's been great for him. He's loving it. He's found a job where he's helping people meet their personal financial needs, and that's great. But I do recommend to people that are thinking about careers and things, do something where you can use it directly to help people or innovate or add value, because just because you have a job doesn't mean you can't take an interest in other things. So in my spare time, I read history, sociology. I'm really interested in those topics, but I want to have a major in college that I can get out and get a job and make something, do something to help people. So I do encourage people to pursue degrees that are that they can make a difference today, and then you get a whole life to study sort of academic subjects.
So basically science is a good way to do that.
Yeah, one of many.
Science, engineering.
Yeah.
So you studied at the University of Texas and you studied at MIT. MIT is actually one of the best schools in the world. How important was this special school for your later career?
Well, I got a great undergraduate education at the University of Texas, and I got an excellent graduate education at MIT.
Did you pick MIT because it was this big famous school in Cambridge?
Actually, I picked it because they had a program that was, you could do a master's degree in management and a master's degree in chemical engineering at the same time.
So you did both at the same time?
Yeah, and if you got accepted to this program, you got a scholarship. And so that was very appealing because then I didn't have to go into debt. So that was very appealing. Of course, the school had a great reputation, but I actually think, and I've seen this over and over again, what matters most in people's career is not where they went to school. It's how they applied themselves wherever they went to school and how they apply themselves when they get out of school.
So if you hire people, you don't look too much at the name of the school?
No, forget it. In fact, I would say having gone to a school like that and then also having friends who went to Ivy League schools and things, I can just say I know so many people who went to Ivy League schools and then, that didn't really do anything for them. And then I know so many people who went to like small schools you never heard of who are amazing leaders and fantastic scientists. So I love MIT, I love University of Texas, but hey, the thing that matters the most is what you do with what you've got.
Okay.
Great. After your studies, you started your first job at the chemical company Ethel Corporation in the Belgian branch, and that was followed by positions in the Netherlands, in Great Britain, Switzerland, and now Germany. Why did you choose to start your first job abroad and not in the USA?
Yeah, it's funny. I grew up in a small town in Texas, and I went off to university in the big town in Texas, in Austin, which was very big from where I came from. And then I did a summer job my junior year in a chemical plant. And then I got a call in my senior year, I got a call about a summer internship that I could do at the same kind of plant, but in Germany. They wanted me to do the same project. So I was like, wow, the idea of working in another country, I know today that seems so normal. But believe me, in the 80s, like none of my friends had done that. Barely any of my friends had ever been across the Atlantic Ocean. So the idea of going and working somewhere, I thought, I got to do this. And so I basically got the bug. I came, I had a great summer in Stade am Elbe in northern Germany. And then after that, I said, hey, I'm going to see if I can find a job in Europe just because I'm not ready to go back to Lake Jackson yet.
I see. You did an impressive career in Europe. In 2013, you joined Swiss company Roche, one of the largest pharma companies in the world. And in 2019, you actually became the head of the pharma division, which is a major part of the business. And in addition to exploring various career paths, we also would like to use this podcast to give young people some insights into different industries. We already talked about it a little bit, but could you tell our viewers what makes the pharma industry special for you?
Yeah. There's one thing that I think is obvious that people would get about the sort of biotech and pharmaceutical field. The idea that you're making medicines to cure various cancers or serious life-threatening diseases, or to, like, we have a pill that we hope to bring to the market next year that dramatically reduces menopause symptoms. I mean, that's great. Think of how many people you're helping when you do that. So I think a lot of people go into the pharmaceutical industry for that reason. To be honest, for me, it was more because I'm a kind of a technology nerd, and I just couldn't believe some of the things that were happening in science, just kind of mind-blowing things, and I wanted to be a part of that. So that's what attracted me to the biotech field.
And you would say pharma industry is really deep tech stuff?
Yeah, because here's what's a little confusing. So some people say, well, what's the difference between pharma and biotech?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it used to be that there were pharma companies and there were biotech companies. And so my first jobs in biotechnology were at biotech companies. I worked for Biogen, I worked for Genentech. These were companies that were founded based on this technology of gene splicing and all the things you could do with that. You can create novel proteins. You can recreate natural proteins. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do. Whereas historically, the pharmaceutical industry was about chemicals. You know, basically, and chemicals that we put in a pill and swallow, we call that a drug or a pharmaceutical, but it's a chemical. Whereas the biotech industry was making proteins and antibodies, you know, things that are biological. Today, the lines have been blurred because many, if not most, of the major developments from pharmaceutical companies are now biotechnology developments. So now, if you take that one step further, if you look at Bayer Crop Science, this is a massive, in a way, a massive biotech company because we're making, I'll give you two examples of that. We're making seeds, like for example, 50,000 new genetic variants of corn every year. And we characterize their genomes, and we use our knowledge of their genomes to predict their properties as a plant. You know, for example, their growth rates, their productivity, the yield of corn, all kinds of things like that. So that's biotech. But even crop protection. For example, the current versions of most pesticides, you know, to treat against insects, against fungi, against weeds, those are chemicals that were created by just studying thousands of chemicals and seeing what their effects are on plants or on insects. Now we're starting with the biology. For example, we take insects, we look at their DNA, we look at their cells, and we're isolating individual proteins from the insects. And then we're looking for chemicals that can precisely interact with an insect. So for example, you might have a chemical that could kill sucking insects, that kill plants, but wouldn't affect other insects like bees or butterflies, okay? And this is all super scientific. It's not what you'd think. Like a seed business or a crop protection business today, it's ultra high tech.
And I really love your excitement for the science part. Our podcast is called Young Economist, so it's a little bit more about the economy part of it. Could you give us a little insight about the business side of the pharma industry? You mentioned it, for example, you have some drugs with patents, and they make a huge bunch of your revenue, but at some point the patent is gone.
Yeah.
Isn't that a really risky business?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a beautiful business model, and it's so good for the world. And I know there's a lot of, I would say, well-meaning people who kind of have mixed feelings about making money by selling medicines.
What's your opinion about that?
Oh, it's very clear. This is a huge benefit for the world. I mean, every year there's a new disease that we can solve. In my career, I've seen diseases like multiple sclerosis. I've been personally involved with 3 generations of new medicines for multiple sclerosis.
And you think it's just necessary to make money out of it, to invest in research?
Exactly. And let me tell you how it works. It's really simple. We spend, in the industry, let's say, $1 billion and 15 years to develop a new medicine.
Is that a real number? $1 billion for a new drug? Is it possible?
It's actually, the number's actually, I think it's about 2.3 is the best estimate today.
For one drug?
For one medicine.
That's insane.
For a fundamentally new medicine, okay? We spend $2.3 billion over 15 years, and 1 out of 10 of those becomes a really big breakthrough, okay? And that 1 out of 10, it makes a whole, like for example, in multiple sclerosis, if you go back to, let's say, 1990, and then you look at today, totally different deal. In 1990, there was basically nothing that would stop the progress of multiple sclerosis. And today, we have medicines available where, I mean, I know people who have MS for like 10 years, they're running marathons. Now, not everybody, okay, but we have that level of success. And what happens is, these medicines, they're patent protected for 12 years, maybe 14 years, depending on certain details that I won't bore you with.
That's not too long. 12 or 14 years isn't
No, it's
too long.
not that long.
It's not that long.
It's not that long. And in the first year, you don't sell very much. In the second year, you sell a little more, and over time, the revenues go up as more and more patients try it. And then, hey, when year 12 or year 14 comes, boom, it's over.
Just open for all.
Yeah, because anyone can produce that now, and they can sell it at a price of 5 or 10 or 20 cents on the euro to what your price is, and your business goes away.
Because they didn't do any research. So your
Exactly.
business is basically you spend a lot of money on research,
Yep.
and then you have a certain period where
Yep.
you can make money,
Yep.
and you use most of the money to invest it again
Yep.
in research.
And people who disagree with that business model, I can't understand, because it's really simple. That means, for example, in the case of those MS medicines, that now, that first generation of MS medicines, it's available to people all over the world for a very low price because somebody was willing to invest in it. But if you couldn't make money, why would you wouldn't take all those risks for 15 years of no return? And then, so it's a great model. And
so one last question, how much money you as Bayer spend each year just on research and development?
we're about $6 billion.
$6 billion every year.
Euros.
Euros.
Yep. Yeah.
Massive.
And that's in pharmaceuticals and crop science and to a lesser degree in consumer health, because in consumer health a lot of the innovation happens in things like formulation, for example, coming up with a vitamin pill that's easier for children to swallow or something. That's not as challenging. You don't have to spend 15 years to come up with that.
It was only last summer that you became the CEO of Bayer, which is one of the top jobs in this industry. What personal qualities enabled you to pursue such a career?
I think that for leaders, whether it's in business or in government or other fields, I think curiosity, always wanting to understand why things work. Yeah. I think a lot of your viewers are maybe young economists or financially oriented people. They often have a lot of questions. Economists especially, it's almost like the science of answering questions. And I think that kind of always being interested in everything around, it's actually a very useful trait for leaders in business, because especially large companies always have kind of like 1,000 different things going on. And if you only understand a small, narrow area, it's very hard to be effective across that kind of spectrum. So I think people who start at a young age, being very curious and always wanting to understand everything around them, I think that's an important personal quality. I think I always recommend to people that are early in their careers, don't spend so much time agonizing over whether you do this job or that job. The thing that matters the most is that you do a great job in whatever you're doing. It is important to find a job that you're suited to. I mean, I've worked in product development, I've worked in operations, I've worked in finance, I've worked in marketing, I've worked in management. So a lot of different kinds of jobs. And I would say my fun factor wasn't the same in all my jobs. Like, there were certain jobs I had that were more fun than others, but I did make it my business to try to be the best I could in each area. So I do recommend people try a variety of different jobs and find the ones that they really love the most, and maybe that's going to be a focus area. But getting different kinds of experiences, that's really useful too.
Yeah, it's a very good advice. With Bayer and Roche, you've worked for two major companies, which probably have a lot in common. But how do they differ?
I think these are companies that have a lot of scientifically oriented people that are very interested in solving some of the world's most important problems. And so I think in that way, there's a lot in common. Probably more in common than different that way. The cultures are very supportive. I've worked in some environments that were kind of mean environments, where people were, it was kind of like the way you get ahead is by climbing on the backs of other people. There's a lot of companies like that in the world. My advice to young people is avoid that. You know, you can get things done in a company like that. You can still achieve things, but it's a lot less pleasant. And I think in the end, the race is won by the company that has a better culture.
Do you think there's a difference between American and European companies, or is there a difference in the culture depending on?
There's lots of differences between American companies and European companies, but probably the difference from one American company to another American company can be quite large. So I do think the environments can be different. And
in what way?
I mean, I'm really encouraging people, for example, in Germany, to take risks, to be bold, and to try different things. You know, there's a little bit of I think we're seeing this in AI right now.
That's quite tough for many Germans to be bold and.
Yeah, well, I think first off, Germans have a history of being very bold and inventive, and we see this in areas like sports, and we see it in areas like engineering. I mean, there's many leading German companies in many fields. And so it's not, I don't think there's nothing wrong with the, there's nothing innately wrong, but what can be wrong is sometimes the environment or the rules. So for example, take AI. I mean, the American approach to AI, if I would summarize it in very general terms, is that, okay, AI is a new thing, and it can be used for very good things and very bad things. And therefore, we don't need a lot of laws for AI, because we have laws about doing good things and we have laws about not doing bad things. Okay? So if somebody wants to use AI to do something bad, we have laws to prosecute someone for doing bad. So we don't need to make a lot of new laws for AI. A little bit the European approach is sort of like, whoa, it's a new thing. We better make a bunch of rules to govern it, because we just can't have some new thing just going out there without there being a lot of laws and rules.
Right.
And I don't think that's so smart, because the bad guys in this world, and
figure out a way.
And the bad guys I'm not just talking about bad guys that live inside the borders of the EU, right? Bad guys are all over the place, and those bad guys are not listening to those rules. Okay, so what you do is you make a lot of rules that get in the way of the good guys making progress, while the bad guys are off to the races. And I think that's foolish.
And I think we can do a lot in terms of promoting taking risks in Europe. I mean, that's what our NGO is all about. We do a lot of entrepreneurship education, business education. I think there's a real issue, because, as you told, we had a generation of inventors a long time ago. All the companies we visit, Mercedes, Volkswagen, Porsche, Bayer, they were all started by great innovators, but that's 100 years ago. I think we need a new class of risk takers in Germany, especially. I think there's quite a potential, but yeah, that's just our opinion on this matter. But I think you kind of agree that there are some opportunities.
I do think, though, I think the environment needs tended to.
And I think it's a mindset issue as well, because I spend a lot of time in the United States, and I think especially students in college and university are a little bit more open for starting their own business, and I think there's some potential to create. But let's talk a little bit more about your business. We talked until now quite a bit about the pharma and medicine part of your business. Let's talk about the crop science business. If we talk about crop science, we must address the elephant in the room. You have a big issue with Monsanto. That's a massive seed company that Bayer acquired long before you became CEO. In a massive transaction, I think you paid $63 billion, which is an insane amount of money. Today, the whole Bayer company, including Monsanto, is just worth around $20 billion. So that seems like a heavy burden on your shoulders. How you handle the situation?
Yeah. The concept of bringing together one of the leading crop protection companies in the world with one of the leading seed companies in the world is brilliant.
Which one was Bayer and which one was Monsanto?
Bayer was more on the crop protection, but had some seed business, and Monsanto was more on the seed side, but had some crop protection business. So bringing those two together, it makes all kinds of strategic sense. And we're showing that right now with we're launching a new, it's called Precion. It's a short corn system, and I won't bore you with all the details of why that's important, but it's basically corn plants that you can plant closer together, and they are shorter, so they don't blow down in the wind. And that may sound like a trivial problem, but if you're a farmer and a big windstorm comes through and takes out half your crop, it's not a trivial problem. So this is a new system that relies very much on the sort of the intersection of seed technology. It takes advantage of advances in crop protection technologies, and then digital farming, which is, we have satellite-based system that's able to look at kind of every square meter of a farmer's field and have some predictive ability to know, like, oh, is there an outbreak of a disease in the field? Is that something that needs to be addressed? So this is a very complex matter.
So that's actually part of your business, digital farming business.
Yes. So to pull off something like that, that never could have been, let's say, just Monsanto or just Bayer. Okay. It's that scale we have and the scope, it allows us to do things that are more advanced. It leads to results. What kind of results is that? So I was with a farmer in his field in Iowa last summer, or actually in September, around harvest time, and his normal yield would be about 250 bushels per acre in this case. These are American units.
Farming terms, yes.
Yeah. And with this more densely planted approach, he was able to get 360 bushels per acre.
That's just because of your services.
Well, the whole package, the technology, the seed technology, the whole system. But that's a big deal, because if you think about it, the world needs to be able to produce more food on less land, and also to be able to grow things like, for example, for feedstocks for renewable jet fuel.
This all sounds quite exciting, but what is, in your opinion, the main problem about this deal? Because if you look at the market value, there has to be an issue.
Yeah. So the biggest issue has been the lawsuits, and the U.S. litigation industry has been pursuing.
You call it industry?
It is an industry. In fact, in a recent disclosure, one of the private equity firms that's financing these tort lawyers in America, they disclosed that they raised a fund of $5.8 billion, including foreign capital. I mean, $5.8 billion for one fund funding these lawyers to sue companies like Bayer. So that's been the biggest issue, and that's something that I spend a lot of my time addressing. And we think there's important policy changes that are needed, because it's a system that is draining the life out of a lot of companies that are trying to innovate and trying to bring new products, trying to bring solutions for the environment, for food, and then but the money ends up going to trial lawyers, and we think that's a bad system.
Yeah. So how do you expect this to be resolved, and when?
Well, we have a number of approaches. As I mentioned, we think there's policy changes that are required. We spend a fair amount of energy communicating about this. And we also are defending ourselves vigorously in court. We had a major appeals court ruling last summer that means that this case may go to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, in the next year or so. So there's a variety of ways this could happen, and we're focused on making sure it happens.
And you hope that if this issue is figured out in a certain way, for example, by a ruling by the Supreme Court, that this will help the stock to grow and that will make a major change for your company?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the political side. As a CEO of a global company, you have to deal with politics. It's been a crazy few weeks politically. We have probably government changes in the United States and in Germany by early next year. You are a US citizen working for a German company, so you are basically affected twice by this political developments in all over the world. So how much of your time you spend with politics and talking to politicians? How important is the political side for your business?
Well, I think it's very important. For one thing, healthcare policy is an important topic in every country. And so this comes to questions of whether certain medicines are covered by healthcare systems. That's an important topic that involves politicians. Food security is a big deal. And we tend to take it for granted a bit, especially in a rich country like Germany. People think, oh, food, no, food is a big deal. And in fact, if you look at elections, we know that probably the #1 topic in the US election was the economy and specifically inflation. And the most visible inflation that people have is food inflation. Because you don't need a new car every day, but most people want 3 meals a day. And they know, hey, I used to buy this can of food that was used to be $1.50, now it's $3.50. I mean, what's going on? And it's not just anecdotes. I mean, we know that, for example, in America, the price of food as a share of household income in 1970 was about 11%. So people spent 11 cents for every dollar they earned on food. In 2019, that had gone from 11 cents down to 7 cents. So quite good progress. Today, it's 11 cents again. So we basically wiped out 40, 50 years of gains on food prices and food kind of efficiency in 5 years. And people are unhappy about that. And they vote when they're unhappy, and they vote for change.
And change is coming, indeed, but if there's change, there's also a certain level of uncertainty. And I think many people and many of our viewers feel this level of uncertainty about administration changes in Germany and especially in the United States. I think there are many changes coming. Are you worried as a CEO of such a major company about this administration changes? Are you afraid of new regulations or getting along with new administrations in Germany and in the United States?
Look, we make it our business to have productive relationships with the governments in every country where we operate. We have, I think 17,000 employees in America, and they're important parts of the community in a number of major cities and states. We're, perhaps the most important supplier to U.S. farmers. So we need to have a good relationship with the state governments and the federal governments, and it doesn't matter which party is in charge. That's something that's on us.
So you are confident that you will be able to get along with the new administration? Yeah,
I think so, because both the Republicans and the Democrats are, dependent on food prices being under control, on there being good food security, on making sure that there's American-sourced products for key agricultural inputs, and that's our business.
Great. With Young Economist, we also explore different leadership styles, and you are planning a restructuring that may be unique in Germany. The Handelsblatt wrote, and I have to quote that you want to free your employees from hierarchies, bureaucracy, and supervisors. So what is your vision for modern leadership and corporate structures, and especially for Bayer in this respect?
Yeah. Well, probably a lot of your viewers maybe haven't had much experience in bureaucre's yet.
That's true.
That sort of lays ahead of them. You got something to look forward to. Here's the thing. This word bureaucracy, it's one of these words that gets used all the time. Very few people, I think, actually know. They know what it is when they see it, but they don't know where it comes from.
Where does it come from?
It's like this. First off, I think there's not many people who wake up in the morning and say, hey, today I'm going to go and be bureaucratic.
Probably not.
Right? I mean, nobody does that.
Probably not.
Whether they're working for the government or they're working at a company. And by the way, people love to pick on the government as being bureaucratic. But in my experience, companies are every bit as bureaucratic as governments.
So where does it come from?
So where it comes from is, it comes from a few things, but mostly what it comes from is complexity, layers, distance. Let's just think about those three for a minute, okay? Complexity, layers, distance. So complexity. When I worked at a startup, and I had an idea about some change that could help a customer. Then I called, two of my colleagues, or I saw them in the lunchroom, and went and sat with them and said, "Hey, I've got this idea. What do you think about this?" And they said, "That might work." And the other one said, "No, maybe you should change it this way." And then we had a conversation, and then I said, "Well, what do you think? Should we do it?" And they were like, "Yeah, go for it." Okay. When I worked at a company, that was a company with 30 people or with 700 people, because I worked in companies like that. But then when I worked in companies with like 10,000 people, the same idea, I couldn't do it like that anymore. Instead, I needed to talk to like 8 or 10 people, because you couldn't just go do something. You gotta get buy-in. So you got like 8 or 10 people. And then you say, well, why do I need 8 or 10 people? Well, I needed 8 or 10 people because in the small company, let's say I was the marketing person, there was the finance person, and an HR person, okay? But in the bigger company, well, we've got 3 marketing people, because there's like specialized parts of it. And then we got 2 different finance people. And then we got this other department that's coordinating between the departments. And then you get the idea? And then, so that's the complexity. The layers. The layers is, okay, now I've got these 10 people together. We've had that discussion that I had with 3 people before. I got some input on it. So now I can go do the thing, right? No, you can't just do it. You got to get the managers to sign off on it.
How do you get rid of this?
Yeah, well, let me finish, and then I'll come. Okay, so you got complexity, you got layers, and often it's not just one layer of bosses you got to get, right? And by the way, when the bosses, before they approve it, they say, oh, you need to change this. And you change it, and then they say, well, you better go check with the other boss who already approved it, because he didn't approve that change. Okay, you get the idea? Complexity, layers, distance.
Yep.
Distance is distance from the customer, distance from the product. So, for example, take me. Okay, I'm the CEO. I'm quite removed from the customer. I'm quite removed from the product. So why does it make sense that I would be making key decisions about a customer or a product? It doesn't make sense, right? So, but bureaucratic organizations put decision-making at the top. They put a lot of layers in, which slows everything down, and they make everything very complex by chopping up jobs into little pieces. And that combination of those 3 factors is what bureaucracy is. And the only way to get rid of it, guess what? You got to attack all 3 things. You got to, instead of having the 10 different positions to do the job of 3, it's got to be 3 people that have broader scopes. Because people are not, we're not like circus animals that can only be trained to do 1 or 2 tricks. We can do a lot of different things. So you gotta put jobs back together, having fewer different roles with more power. You gotta take out layers, and not just like a lot of companies, when they talk about taking out layers, they mean they're going from 10 to 9. Forget it. That's not taking bureaucracy down. You gotta go from 10 to 4, okay? And then distance, you gotta put the decision making with the people doing the work, not the boss. So those are basically the 3 ingredients.
But to be able to do that, you have to give ownership and responsibility to your employees.
That's right.
And we told you before we started the interview that we have our little company with 20 employees.
Yeah.
That's nothing like Bayer with 100,000 employees
Yeah.
all over the world. And even for me, it's one of the big chunks of work that I have to deal with every week to figure out how to give responsibility and real ownership to my 20 employees in my small company.
Yeah.
How you do that in a company with 100,000 people? Is there any way to realistically do that?
Yes, there is, and you should study some of the companies that are doing it. So
what is a great example?
The most striking example in the world that I know of is a place in the Netherlands called Buurtzorg, and it's a home health care provider, and they have 16,000 employees and 2 managers.
I see.
Wow.
Okay?
And that's the goal for Bayer as well, to have way less of managers and way more of empowerment.
Way less of managers and way more of empowerment. Now, there's good reasons why we can't do what Buurtzorg's done. They have basically one business, which is home nursing, and they have like 15,000 nurses who are professionals and they know what to do, and they don't need, there's not a lot of coordination need, do you know? Whereas we're making medicines that, let's say, require 1,000 different people to be involved, from functions as diverse as biology or analytical chemistry or marketing or clinical operations or medical. So we have all these different skills required, and so there is more of a coordination need. So we can't go down to 2 managers. We still need great managers, but their role looks very different. We put the decision-making power for 95% of the decisions with the people doing the work. And then you start, by the way, in most organizations, you start at the top and you build the org chart down. What we do is we start with the customer or the product, and then we build the organization around that. And so
this all sounds like a huge mission. How many years will it take until you are at a point where you say, I finished
We're done?
the job? Yeah,
we're done? It's hard to say precisely. We're on a kind of a 3-year project on this.
So you started last year?
We started, we're about a year in. We're about
so.
a year in, and yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm quite interested in watching how this works out, because I think it's really important, and it's a nice study with this major company.
Yeah. Well, it's something that we got. How do I say? We have a lot of excited people. We have a lot of confused people.
Probably in other words, scared people, because if I would be a manager at Bayer,
at the beginning about that, right?
Yeah. No, it's a huge change. This is not like a typical reorg. You just take out the org chart and you cross out a few boxes and you deliver the bad news to people, and then you get on with life. But it doesn't really change anything. And what we're doing is we're saying, no. We're putting the mission in the center. We're putting decision making with the people. And then the rest of us, we're here to serve the people that are serving the customer or making the product.
We've read that you're also a deeply religious person, which we 3 have in common. So how do your faith and Christian values influence your leadership?
Yeah, it's the most important part of my life. And I turn to God for strength in the hardest times, or wisdom with the most difficult decisions. It's an objective standard for me. And for example, the idea of leadership as a service to others, that having a faith that says that we're here to serve and not be served, that's important. Now, do I always live up to it? No. But every day I'm reminded, hey, it's not about you, Bill. It's about other people. It's about the mission. It's about, helping people with cancer. It's about helping farmers grow a better crop, and it gives me energy every day.
But there are sometimes tough times, especially if it comes to business. I know those tough times, you probably know them as well. And there are people, employees, customers who make you angry. And I think especially at these days, for me, it's a challenge to keep a soft heart and be lovely to people. How do you manage tough times and people who give you a hard time?
Well, it's funny. My wife and I just celebrated our 35th anniversary last week.
Happy birthday.
Anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah.
Not birthday.
But throughout our time, and we've moved many different times, and I just tell you this as a story. And I don't know if you have this expression in Germany, there's an expression in English, there's one in every neighborhood. There's often somebody, each place we've lived, there was some neighbor that all the other neighbors hated because this person was just so mean or so unreasonable, and for some reason, I don't know why, and maybe God put it in my heart, early on, I just decided, I'm going to try to be a friend to these people.
Yeah.
Because the way I looked at it was, okay, everyone in the neighborhood hates them, so they don't need one more person to hate them. Maybe I'm going to try to be a friend. And there was a lady like this in one place we lived, and when we first moved into our house, our children were little, and they were out on the swing set, and they were making a lot of noise. And she came over and looked over the fence between our houses and yelled at our kids, "You kids are making so much noise, you go in your house, you," right? And they came crying in, and then I came home from work that day, and my wife told me what had happened, and I was angry, oh, I can't believe this, and then I thought, oh, no, she doesn't need, this lady does not need one more person to hate her. So I went over to her house, and I rang the doorbell, and she came to the door, and I said, oh, hey, I'm your new neighbor. I heard our kids were making a lot of noise. I'm really sorry about that. If that ever happens again, here's my phone number. Just call me. I'll make sure that they're quiet, and really sorry to disturb you. And after that never happened again. It could have happened again, but it didn't happen. And I would always take our kids over to trick or treat at her house. And on Halloween, this was in America, and nobody went to her house to trick or treat, except my kids, because she was blacklisted by all the neighbors. But anyway, I don't know. That's a little bit of a story for you.
I just love it. I think it's my favorite story of the whole podcast so far. So thank you so much. And I mean, you never know what this person has to carry in.
Exactly.
So it's probably a good way, and it keeps you motivated and with a good attitude. And I think that's.
Yep.
We come to the very end of our podcast. We have 2 questions left, and we have to talk about one more topic because we are in Germany. We have to talk about soccer, and Leverkusen and your company is very much known for soccer in Germany. You are in a unique spot because I think it's the only major team that's quite special, which is completely owned by a company. So Bayer Leverkusen is owned by your company. That's special. And you are really successful. You won German championship last year. So you are American. If you talk about football, you probably don't think about soccer too much.
Yeah, Americans play football with our hands.
Right. It's a stupid point. Have you connected to German soccer culture yet?
Oh, definitely. I love it.
Yeah, you do?
Yeah. I go. My wife and I go to the games when we're in town.
It's a perk of the job, probably.
Yeah. But we just go because we love it. And I don't. I made a rule that I don't plan my schedule around it. I make my schedule for work, and if I happen to be in town when there's a game, then I'm there. But it's good fun, and I'm really happy for the people of Leverkusen and for all the fans who've been fans for so many people I met last season who told me I've been a Leverkusen fan for 70 years and we never won, and now we won, and they were so happy. I love that, and all the credit goes to. Yeah, Fernando and Simone Rolfes and to Xabi Alonso and the players and the whole staff. They did a fantastic job. And by the way, I have 0 credit to claim because I'm the worst soccer player that ever lived. And so it definitely has nothing to do with me.
But a good skater.
Yeah, maybe I'm good luck. Maybe I'm good luck, but I definitely don't know how to kick a soccer ball.
But I mean, this podcast is called Young Economist, so let's talk a little bit about the business side of soccer. So the team is owned in a certain way by your company.
Yeah.
Does the company in any way benefit from the success of the team? Is there like any good connection? Can you see that more people are buying aspirin because your team is winning? So is there any business connection between the team and your core business?
I would say it's very difficult to say with any precision what the benefit is. I do know this. Pretty much every country in the world Well, every country in the world that plays soccer, which is most of the countries in the world, they all know Bayer Leverkusen.
You do.
And I've had conversations with senior government officials from the biggest countries in the world, and then I say, "Oh, hi, I'm Bill Anderson from Bayer," and they say, "Oh, Bayer Leverkusen," and they're immediately telling me about Xabi Alonso, and so I think it's a good in Latin America, in Brazil, for example, and I'll probably blow this, but there was an old advertising campaign that's "Che Bayer, che gut." No, it's or "Che bon." "Che Bayer, che bon." I'm sure I'm butchering that, but and so when I go to Brazil, I go to check in a hotel, and they say, "Oh, what's your company's name?" I say Bayer, and they say, "Oh, che Bayer, che bon." So if it's Bayer, it's good, right? That's precious, and
that's
I think
a benefit.
And I think the football club, it all goes along with that.
Interesting. We are coming to the final question already, and this question runs like a common thread through our podcast, because we've asked this question every guest before, and it is as follows: with all the experience you've gained personally and professionally over the course of your career, what 3 tips would you give your 20-year-old self?
Well, I'm going to go back to a couple of things that I shared with you. First off, I learned to be in business when I was a kid. I mentioned my father and his kind of rough upbringing. I mean, my mom grew up on a chicken farm in the Depression, and so her family had eggs, and they even had meat once a week. So they were well off. But my mom and dad, they very much, like my mom grew up on a chicken farm, that was their business, it's the family business. She worked in the family business, everybody did everything. And they taught me, hey, you don't just, like I remember I wanted to go get a job at the movie theater in our town, because that was kind of a cool thing to do. And I think they paid something like 75 cents an hour. And I said, Dad, I want to go get a job at the movie theater, because you could get a job there if you were underage. You didn't have to be 16. And my dad was like, no. You gotta own your business. And I was mowing our lawn when I was a little kid. And in South Texas, you mow the lawn all year round. There's a great business to mow lawns. So he said, look, I'll charge you, 10 cents an hour for use of my lawnmower, and you can go mow lawns, and you'll make a lot more money than you make it in the movie theater. So I did it, and I basically went into business when I was a little kid, and I've been in business ever since. And I would say just that idea of own the business, everything about the business. Don't to your listeners, fine, go work for a company, but act like you're an owner. Yeah. Take responsibility. You see something out of place, fix it, right? Own the business. I mentioned the idea of doing something great, but do something great that's going to make a difference to someone, not just talk about it. There's a lot of talk about saving the world, and then there's people that are actually doing it one little step at a time. And so I would be all for it. Do it one little step at a time, and if you prove that you're trustworthy with something little, someone will give you something bigger. And if you prove that you're good at that, they'll give you something bigger. So do something great and make it be real. Not just talk, not just protest, like do it. And then finally, I would say, just know it's not about you. The people that are most fulfilled in life, and now I'm getting kind of older. I got a lot of friends that are even older than I am. Nobody wishes they'd been more ruthless, or that they had, if they had taken advantage of more people. The people I know that are the happiest when they're older are the people who invested in the lives of other people. And so I would offer those up.
Great.
I think that's a great
That's
answer.
amazing.
Actually, the slogan of our company is machen statt meckern. So it's basically acting
True.
instead of complaining. And I think that fits perfect. Thank you so much, Bill, for taking the time. I think you said some very impactful things for our viewers. And we wish you and your employees all the best and many blessings. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks very
Thank
much,
you.
you guys.